In the next 75 minutes, you're going to learn a brand new way of communicating with those around you that is going to elevate the power and the strength of your conversations. And you will be able to increase trust, increase collaboration, improve cultures, and transform the workplace. That is the power and the promise of conversational intelligence. And today, you're going to get a taste of that. I will introduce the subject to you and also give you an opportunity to live it and feel it so that you can see the power of conversational intelligence through the time that we have this morning. How does that sound? Good, because you're in a good session if you'd like to learn more about conversational intelligence. My name is Michael Neuendorff. I run Bay Area Executive Coach. I'm glad to be here for the third year in a row. The last 2 years I spoke on a single topic, and I decided to shift gears this year and bring you conversational intelligence. The coverage for today's session is this. So first I want to share with you, what is the premise of CIQ? What does it promise? Beyond what I just told you, what more should you understand about what CIQ holds for you? And then what can it do for your organization? How did I encounter CIQ and how did I become involved in it? Why did I decide to dedicate so much time and energy and resources to learning about CIQ? And then how do we apply it? What can it do for you? We'll learn about that, and then we'll also go through some exercises so that you can understand how CIQ works. Like, how can it work for you and your team? So let's read about the premise of CIQ from the founder of conversational intelligence, which is Judith Glaser. So Judith believes that in all organizations, the culture starts with the conversational level. That when conversations work, relationships work. When relationships work, teams work. And when teams work, then the culture is transformed. And so she believes that we have to fix conversations when cultures aren't working. So if we can repair this level, then everything bubbles up from there and improves. And so that has been her mission with conversational intelligence. So let's start with an exercise. I want you to actually participate with me in doing a CIQ exercise without yet knowing what CIQ is, because I want you to just kind of feel it. And as you feel it, then we'll learn about it and talk about it, and then you'll understand why this exercise was chosen. And don't worry, it's nothing too crazy. What I want you to do is for 6 minutes, you're going to find someone in the room. It can be the person that you're sitting next to, but if you feel like just getting up and walking around, find someone in the room that you don't know. This needs to be someone that you have not yet met here at the conference and had a conversation with. And just talk for about 6 minutes and try to find one common thing that you share. One commonality that you share with the other person in about 6 minutes. Fun exercise, right? You just experienced conversational intelligence. And conversational intelligence is abbreviated as CIQ. So when I say CIQ, I mean conversational intelligence. You just experienced it, and you don't even know what it is yet, and you already feel good. And how you feel right now is how you should feel after most of your conversations. And that's the purpose of our session, is to have you feel more like you feel right now in your work days. Wouldn't that feel good? That's what we want. That's what we want to achieve. Exactly. Not burned out, stressed, tired, frustrated, but feeling like you just felt right now. Okay, so I want to check with a couple people here in the front row. You talked with her, right? Did you find one thing in common?
Yes.
What was it?
We're both managers.
You're both managers. Okay. Did you find anything a little more complicated?
Both moms.
You're both moms. Okay. You're both moms and managers. Oh, pet owners. Okay. So you actually have 3 things in common.
Oh, we have a lot.
You don't,
6 minutes gave us enough time.
yeah. All right. So you found a lot of things in common. And do you actually feel that you might have made a friend in a way?
And a connection.
Yeah. You've made a new friend here at the conference, right? Okay. How about you two?
I was with her.
You were with her. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Did you find something in common?
Yeah.
What was
she
it?
lives in San Diego. I live in Denver.
Uh-huh.
Both huge craft brewery cities.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm going to San Diego next week, and she just came back from Colorado Springs with her daughter.
Wow, okay, that is interesting. Yeah, now, would you have guessed that two women here at the WITI conference would find something in common, that they both come from craft beer cities? Yeah. How about that? Okay. Yeah. And Colorado kind of has a booming marijuana industry going now too, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and there actually was something here at the WITI Summit about the marijuana industry, I believe, right? That was on Sunday.
Interesting movie screening on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Women
so,
in weed.
Women in weed, right. Yeah, it's happening here in California too. Excellent. All right, well, I'll explain later the purpose of this exercise and how you lived conversational intelligence through this exercise. But let's now watch a video that gives you more of an introduction to CIQ.
There are many types of intelligence, from book smarts to street smarts, from intellectual intelligence to emotional intelligence, and each gives us our own unique abilities for personal success. Yet one type of intelligence is universal and different from all the rest. It's something everyone possesses, yet until now has remained hidden from plain sight. This intelligence has the game-changing power to strengthen relationships, transform teams, and shape the future of our organizations for mutual success. This universal intelligence is called conversational intelligence. Let me explain. Each of us speaks an average of about 16,000 words each day. Trillions of conversations are taking place around the globe every single second. But just how many of these conversations actually make a difference? 9 out of 10 conversations miss the mark. Not all conversations are easy, so we avoid them. We talk past each other, we bang heads, or we get addicted to being right and stop listening to what others are really saying. Now, advances in neuroscience are giving us the tools to look inside of our brains while we're having conversations to reveal just what is going on and why. What we are learning is that conversations are not just about words or information. Encoded in every conversation is a hidden language of trust. And when we speak with each other, significant neurochemical exchanges take place that impact how trusting or distrusting we will be. When we are stuck in distrustful, unproductive, and even destructive exchanges, we activate our fear networks, causing us to withdraw or fight or flee. Yet not all difficult conversations need to cause us to feel threatened, close down, and protect ourselves from harm. Imagine you could activate your wisdom to discover how to elevate the quality of your conversation in the moment. Learn how to gauge your impact and shift your influence positively. Develop ways to get in front of the curve and prime conversations for trust and mutual success.
So there you have it. There's your video intro to CIQ. And here's your introduction to Judith Glaser. She is the founder of CIQ. She originated it in 2013 in terms of actually branding it. She's been studying the field of communication for decades, but decided to come out with it as a branded term. She's spoken on many news programs, been interviewed in many news publications, has blogged regularly for the Huffington Post and the Harvard Business Review. So she's a frequent speaker and writer. But she decided that conversational intelligence was bigger than her, that she could not possibly get conversational intelligence out to enough people in her lifetime. She's also a cancer survivor, having gone through some difficult treatments over the last few years. And so she decided that she wanted to actually get this out into the world through certification programs and getting coaches trained on CIQ so that then they could go out and share with groups large and small, as we're doing today. So these are my words here. Discerning the right type of conversation to have in the right situation. When you can do that, you can elevate conversation to a much higher level. And so that's the ability of CIQ. So how did I get involved with it? I first encountered it through a webinar probably about 1.5 years ago. And after attending that webinar, I thought, this is something I want to know more about. I want to put a lot of time and energy into this. So I enrolled in the program and went through it for 14 months, from October of 2016 through February of this year. And I actually went to the certification level. There are 3 different levels where you could learn it at basic level, you could go to enhanced, or you could actually go all the way, run the marathon, and become certified. In the certification level, I went through a peer coaching group, which was a group of CIQ people going through the certification program, and we coached each other. So we worked together, coaching each other while also learning from Judith, and then I had to submit a milestone project, which had to be approved before I could get my final certification. One of the people in my peer group was Jeffrey Cohn, and his wife is actually here with us today in the room. So I was asking about Karen earlier. Karen's now with us in the room, so very glad that you're here with us, Karen. That's as close as I can get to Jeffrey right now, one of my peers in the program. So I enjoyed it so much that I thought this is something I have to spend a lot of time talking about. So I intend to focus a lot of my practice on CIQ over the next few years to really get this out into the world as much as I can. I'm not the only certified coach in the Bay Area. There are a few others. But when you think about the population of the Bay Area, it will probably take all of us working together for years to ever get this out into many companies. So why do we need CIQ? The reason we need CIQ is because face-to-face conversations in the workplace are lacking. They're lacking and they're not happening often enough. And this is because as teams disperse, as teams get larger, as teams have remote workers and remote managers, we're relying more and more on digital conversations. As you look at this very short list of digital tools, such as email, Slacking, texting, we have Facebook messaging or LinkedIn messages, you see that there are many more tools for digital conversation than the one tool for face-to-face conversation, our mouth. And so we're typing and typing and typing. Before I went into the coaching profession, I worked for Oracle for 10.5 years. And there would be days when I would have numb thumbs from using a BlackBerry too much, and I would have wrist pain. I never had to get to the point where I actually had carpal tunnel and had to wear the brace on the wrist. Have you seen coworkers doing that? Have you experienced that yourself, where you have wrist pain? I had chest pain from being hunched over. They call it the Silicon Valley slump, where your shoulders are in and you're slumped over the keyboard typing too much during the day. And I thought that I was having a heart attack. Sometimes it wasn't a heart attack. There are connectors in our ribs that connect the bones through cartilage, and there's some issue that's created when you slump too much, when you don't stand up straight and expand your chest like this. And that's where I was getting those chest pains from too much time spent focused on digital conversation. And this is the world that we live in. That's one of the reasons I decided to leave that world and go off on my own so that I wouldn't have to type so much. Now I get to talk more. And sometimes my voice gets tired, but my wrists don't get sore, and I haven't had numb thumb for a really long time. So it's a good thing, right? So raise your hand if you rely a lot on digital conversation. That's everybody in the room. Everybody in the room relies a lot on digital conversation. My question to you is this real conversation?
No.
No. So, Karen, what do you think this is if it's not real conversation?
You know, as a manager, I've had to get up from my desk and go talk to two people who are having an email war with each other, right? And it's, you know, he said, she said, he said, she said. I finally get up and say, no more emails. Go talk to each other, because they weren't listening at all. They were lobbing shells at each other, right?
Right.
And they were not communicating. It was, I'm right, no, I'm right. It's like 2 3-year-olds in a room. Only these were, you know, 50-some-year-old engineers.
Right, grown-ups. Grown-ups. I had 2 female clients that I was coaching independently, and they would get into these email wars, and I told one of them, I said, you can't email her anymore. You go into the sandbox, no more emailing with her, because you two can't play well with email. You trigger each other, right? There is a phrase that you use that triggers her, and then she gets upset, and then you escalate it, and then before you know it, you're having what Karen called an email war. And they would always resolve it face-to-face. If they got together face-to-face, they were always able to resolve it, but they could not resolve it on email. Yes?
Question, if they're not face-to-face, what about a phone call?
I think that's a worthy substitute. So let's also add in a phone conversation, but a live, real, two-way conversation, right? I just want to point out before we move on here, do you remember when slacking actually meant you weren't working that hard? And now you know what slacking means, the new term, right? Yeah, if you don't know what it's a communication collaboration software tool that is spreading like wildfire in a lot of companies. But at its heart, it's another digital communications tool. But here's the thing. we elevate the status of the face-to-face conversation, but you may have noticed in the video that it gave a startling statistic. It said that 9 out of 10 conversations missed the mark. And you might think, wow, that has to be exaggerated. You would think, however, is it really exaggerated? What Judith did is she studied 500 companies over a period of time and looked at their conversations and studied their conversations and found that many conversations didn't hit the mark. That the two people that talked actually left with different impressions as to what that conversation was really about. What was the point of the conversation and what was the one person trying to convey to the other person? And this happens fairly often. So even the face-to-face conversation is not always as strong as we'd like it to be. And that's because people may come in with different mindsets heading into the conversation, different ideas about what they want to achieve, and different intentions. So that's where we have to understand that we could actually have an intention, because when conversations do hit the mark, they can be fantastic. So I want to share a quote with you from John Mather, who is a well-known scientist who talks here about the value of real conversations and what can happen. So read this quote. When you read this quote, do you believe it? Do you believe that a group of people that are collectively working together and sharing what they know and discovering can create something greater than one person could? Yes. Absolutely, right? You've probably experienced this. Raise your hand if you've experienced a group conversation that leads to something magical, transformational, wonderful. Right, you've experienced that. And we want that to happen more often. That's what we're looking for with conversational intelligence, is to be able to have more conversations that hit the mark and take that number from 1 of 10 to 7 of 10, 8 of 10, 9 of 10, getting closer to that lofty 10 out of 10 goal, which probably is not possible, but we can get a lot closer than 1 out of 10, that's for sure, using tools like the ones that we're going to talk about today. Conversations create chemical reactions, and those chemical reactions can create other aspects of conversation that you didn't want to have. So you may have seen in the video that conversational intelligence is based on neuroscience. It's not just research-based and anecdotal and theoretical. There's neuroscience behind CIQ. So let's spend a little time talking about that. So in this graphic here of the brain, we have a couple of the sections of the brain that we want to point out. So one here is prefrontal cortex. You may have heard this called the executive brain. This is the seat of higher intelligence in the brain, where when we have a group conversation like what John Mather mentioned in that quote, it's happening with an alignment of the prefrontal cortex in the group, that we're using our executive brains and connecting with each other. You know, there were experiments that were done that showed that when people are connecting with each other, there are actually mirror neurons firing off in our brains. So when the two of you kept finding another thing and another thing and another thing that you had in common, you started actually firing off mirror neurons and really connecting with each other at a deeper level than you anticipated at the beginning of the conversation. And so your brains were actually connecting at a cellular level. I mean, that's the neuroscience behind CIQ. But there's another part of our brain, and this is the amygdala down here, which you may have heard called the primitive brain or the reptilian brain. This is where the fight or flight response is triggered in us when we have this feeling of distrust. And you see that on this slide here, distrust. Distrust can be triggered in less than 1 second. When you meet someone for the first time, your brain is already sizing them up before you even know it. At a subconscious level, you're deciding if I can trust this person or not. Do you believe that? Yeah. It's true. It's happening subconsciously that we're deciding, should I use my amygdala here to protect myself, or should I use my prefrontal cortex to trust this person and connect with them in an open, honest, transparent, and exciting way? Can I discover new ground with this person because I trust them? And when we have conversations that either activate this part of the brain or this part of the brain, there are chemicals that are being released in our body. Chemicals are released when we encounter different situations like these. So when you see this person over here on the left, you have a certain feeling, especially if his anger is being directed at you. You're going to have a certain feeling, and there's going to be a chemical released in your body, and that chemical is the stress hormone. What is that chemical called? Say it a little louder. Cortisol, exactly. Cortisol is the stress hormone that is released when we're having an angry conversation with someone, a fight. This can happen at work, it can happen at home, it can even happen in a retail establishment. When you're arguing with someone in a retail establishment about why they won't accept your return, or why your cell phone bill is wrong, or why did you get bounced from this flight, you can get pretty hot pretty fast. And when that happens, all the other person needs to do is add fuel to that fire, and boom, that cortisol is being released in your body. And that cortisol surges through your body for as long as 24 hours. The shelf life of cortisol is actually a pretty long time for it to surge through your body. And that affects your conversations for the rest of that day. You're just a little bit on edge. Adrenaline might also be released in your body, and so you're feeling it. You might get a stomach ache, lose your appetite, can't sleep. That's how we know there is a chemical reaction happening in our body because of the way we feel after a contentious conversation. This one here, a little bit different. What do you see when you look at her image?
No trust.
Cold, no trust, impatient, standoffish, suspicious, judging, right? There might be some judgment there.
Might just be in deep thought.
Or she could be in contemplation, in deep thought, which is a neutral. That's a neutral term, right? It's not necessarily positive or negative. So we've had one neutral observation and about 6 potentially negative observations. So it is what you make of it, right? It's how you're affected chemically. It's not necessarily how a whole populace or a whole race is affected, but it's about you. At your cellular level, how are you affected by different encounters with different people? That's what I want to share in this part of the presentation, is that we are being affected at a chemical level by different encounters. And so it's important to be aware of that and to accept that as reality because we've experienced it in our lives. We know this is happening. So there are 3 levels of conversation. And in the video, you may have noticed in the subtitles, it said level 1, level 2, level 3. Or it went by so fast that you didn't even notice it. You may have noticed that Hillary Clinton was in a couple of the images. You might have seized on that instead. So in this graphic, there are 3 levels of conversation. And I want to walk you through these 3 levels. And then I'm going to ask you a question about the exercise that we did. So the first level is called level 1, where we are just transacting an exchange of information. It's transactional, where we are telling somebody something, we are asking somebody something. So for example, if you call a restaurant and say, how long is the wait for a table for 4? And you get back 30 minutes, that's a level 1 conversation. Information was exchanged. No big thing. You got the information you wanted, they helped you, you thank them and end the call. So that's transactional, and there's nothing wrong with that. These conversations happen throughout the day. We were told in the video that we might use as many as 16,000 words per day, and of course that's not counting the words that we speak to ourselves in our head. We'd probably have to double the number if we counted that, right? But these are spoken conversations, about 16,000 words a day. A large majority of those might be transactional conversations. That's level 1. Level 2 is positional, where we are negotiating a position. We are trying to get the other person to see our point. We're trying to influence them. We're advocating for something that we believe or feel strongly about. We are trying to build consensus, where we're trying to get other people to agree to our point. If we're in a group meeting, we may be actually competing with someone else to try and get more of the group to believe what we think should be the way we go versus someone else. These are also very common conversations, and you might have these regularly where you are trying to get someone else to see your point. Okay, so that's a positional conversation. Sometimes these conversations can go awry when you're pushing too hard. When you're pushing too hard to get someone to see your point, you might be overlooking the value and the strength of their point, because you have such a strong position and you are falling prey to something that was mentioned in the video, which is a fatal flaw of conversations. When I talk about mindset and your intention, we'll talk about this fatal flaw later in the section on application. Level 3. Level 3 is where CIQ actually comes into play and starts to transform. And so therefore it's called a transformational conversation. Level 3 is the transformational conversation, where you have these positive words like sharing, joining, contracting to do something together in a win-win situation, discovering new forms of collaboration that heretofore did not exist. We're working together in a new way. Judith has a term she loves to share called co-create. Co-creation happens in level 3. And so this is where we can collaborate, innovate, and really get some excellent work done, because trust is at a high level when we're in level 3 conversation. So I said I was going to ask you a question. That question is, the initial exercise that we did, what level do you think that was? Mostly. 1, 2, 2. Were you trying to actually get someone to understand your point and believe your point or accept your point? You were negotiating? Maybe not, right? Maybe not. Who says level 3? Level 3, right? Weren't you? Well, you two didn't know each other before you had the conversation, right? And if you didn't know each other, weren't you sharing and discovering, and you were transforming your understanding of the stranger sitting next to you? So it may have started as a level 1 conversation. I think you were just saying that, where you were just telling and asking, but at some point you may have been triggered into a journey of discovery where you kind of lost track of time and it didn't seem as noisy anymore, because now you really were focused on this other person and you were learning a lot about them. So you went into a level 3 conversation, even though it may have started at level 1. You might have just skipped level 2 and gone right to level 3. Or, so the time limit, I did kind of constrain the conversation a little bit, so I limited the amount of time that you had to discover, and then I told you when time was running out. So there was a little bit of maybe level 2 there, where you were trying to negotiate, like, okay, we don't have a lot of time left. I need to achieve my point, which is to learn something in common that we have. But what is true is that we can go in and out of different levels. That we can go from level 1, level 2, and level 3 in the same conversation. That we might enter a conversation having a point, but then we might open up our minds to what the other person is saying, and we may actually decide to leave our point and accept their point, which would then turn it into a level 3 conversation, because we weren't trying to just achieve this outcome of having you accept what I want you to do. So can you imagine, many of you are managers, can you imagine as a manager having level 3 conversations with your teams where you're not always trying to get them to do what you want them to do, but you're actually tapping into the collective intelligence of your group and sharing and discovering what they have to offer in a belief that together we can achieve great things. So as a manager, you can open up your minds and try to have more level 3 conversations with your team members. Let's take a look at this next graphic, which is called the conversational dashboard. The conversational dashboard kind of breaks down like this. It takes us back to the brain graphic where we had the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, right? You remember that? The amygdala happens more at level 1 when we feel like the person is trying to tell us what to do. Level 1 conversations, they serve a great purpose when I'm trying to just get information and the other person has it, and there's really no agenda. Where level 1 goes wrong is when a person starts trying to tell someone else what to do, and they are yelling at that other person. Or if I'm in the role of sales, and I'm trying to sell someone and tell them why they should buy what I'm selling. And I'm barely even listening to what they're saying because I'm so convinced that you need to buy what I'm selling. That's a level 1 conversation gone wrong. And when we as the listener feel that, we go into resistor mode. This word here says resistor. We start resisting the other person. Our arms may fold, we may lean back or roll back our chair. We move away from the other person because we're resisting their advance on us. The next word here is skeptic, which is also a part of a level 1 conversation gone wrong, where we're not really sure that we believe this other person can be trusted. We're not sure. And so we're trying to protect ourselves in a level 1 conversation that has gone wrong, and it's all about I. So you see here at the bottom, there's this continuum that's going from I to we, and it happens when we spend more time listening than talking. When we spend a lot of time listening, we can connect with the other person and start to become we. If we go from here, protect, we can go into conditional trust. We're at low trust here. Conditional trust is wait and see. We're moving from skepticism to I'd still like to wait to see where this goes. I'm not really sure where this is going, but I'm a little bit open to it. The mind is opening up a little bit. And I can go from here to experimenter, where I'm experimenting with you. Let's experiment together and see where this goes. And my trust is starting to increase, and now I can co-create with you when I'm in a high trust environment, and we can share and discover and partner together where I don't need to protect anything. I'm not trying to protect my position. I'm not trying to protect what I have, but I just want to partner with you and see what we can discover together. Our brains are aligning with the mirror neurons. We're in a state of discovery, sharing, and joining together. And so now we are truly partnering and having a we-centric conversation. So what can CIQ do for you if you're able to have more level 3 conversations? I've mentioned that you can increase trust, that you can have team members be candid. Candidness is when I tell you what I really feel. I truly open up to you. In some workplaces, that would be transformative. There are many workplaces that don't believe that conflict is healthy, and so they try to avoid conflict and confrontation, but actually confrontation is a good thing when it's in a trusting environment and when it's confrontation around ideas and ways of doing things, not personal confrontation. It's not personal destructive dialogue, but we're debating ideas and processes and new directions that we should go in. That's good, healthy confrontation and debate. We can do that when we have a high trust environment. Trust is the foundation. We can have true conversations of discovery. We can be a leader that doesn't need to lead through positional authority, but we lead through people wanting to follow us because they like the way we lead. They like the kinds of conversations that we have. They like the teamwork that we engender. As a level 3 leader that's we-centric, we can be that way. If we're an I-centric leader, it's all about me and my power, people have a hard time following that for a long time. They can, but they may not enjoy it and eventually want to move on to a different type of manager. And innovation is possible at a greater level. So these are the kinds of things that can happen for your organization when you have CIQ. You've heard of groupthink, right? Groupthink doesn't exist in a CIQ type organization because we don't want groupthink. We want everybody to share what they're really thinking and tap into the collective genius of the group and not feel afraid of disagreeing with someone who's in charge. Silos, we see that happen in a lot of organizations. Oftentimes you see sales and marketing departments fighting against each other, or sales and operations fighting against each other, or marketing and manufacturing fighting against each other. Silos don't exist in a high trust organization where people have more level 3 conversations and less level 1 protective conversations. So these are all things that can happen in your organization when you have CIQ. So let's now move into our application section. This is where you're actually going to try more of CIQ. I'm going to share with you a couple of methods that you can use at your company. This can also apply at home. In case you weren't already thinking that, yes, you can have more level 3 conversations at home and build more trust within the family unit. So we need to prime for trust, right? I told you that trust is the foundation. And how does that happen? Well, there is an acronym here about different forms of reality. Different forms of reality. Over on the left side, reality that's based in distrust, it's grounded in revealing less, expecting mistakes, assuming the worst, looking with caution, interpreting with fear, telling secrets, and being a yes person. That's a negative reality that creates distrust where we feel fear and we close down. Positive reality where a different form of chemical is released, oxytocin. Oxytocin is the chemical that was released when you had that great conversation with a stranger and started discovering each other and learning new things and laughing and having fun. That's oxytocin, which is a positive chemical being released in us. This sort of trust is developed by revealing more, expecting the unexpected, assuming the best, looking with an open heart. You may have noticed in that brain graphic that there was the heart brain. The heart connects with the brain. The gut connects with the brain. These organs are connected with the brain. Looking with an open heart, interpreting with facts, telling the truth, and yes to truth-telling. So there are different mindsets that are happening in this area and in this area. Different parts of the brain are being activated. And so we want to prime for trust in the conversations that we have by being this way. By being this way. When you have trust, yes?
Sorry, I have a question. On the previous slide, you have yes people on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering why that is, because for me, that's always seemed like a positive thing. Like people who are yes and who kind of like affirm things.
Oh.
What do you mean by yes people on that side?
Thank you for asking that question, because I'm actually interpreting it in a different way.
Okay.
Being a positive person, wanting to say yes in terms of yes, let's get it done. Yes, I believe that we can do that. That is a positive thing, and that would be over here. The negative connotation, which is what we're getting at over here, is where you say yes, but what you're really thinking is no. That you're saying yes just because the boss told you so, and so you're saying, oh, okay, yeah, sure. But you're resisting, actually. You're skeptical.
So like the phony yes.
Exactly. Thanks for asking that question. Okay, any other questions about that? Yes, Karen.
In an earlier slide, you said eliminate groupthink.
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand how you differentiate groupthink from, say, collaboration.
Sure. So groupthink, and you may disagree with me here, but there was a Pepsi commercial that featured Kendall Jenner. And Kendall Jenner was doing supposedly a modeling shoot where she was in a studio right near a major thoroughfare in a city. She was doing a modeling shoot, and outside was a protest. And the protest was happening as she was doing the shoot, and then noticed the protest, and she decided to join it. So she tore off her wig and joined the protest. And it was a kind of a good thing that she had joined the protest. And then it got to the end, and there were policemen that were standing at the line of the barricade. And she walked up and handed one of these tough-looking policemen a Pepsi. And when she handed them a Pepsi, everything got better. The policemen smiled, and they were really happy. And there was all kinds of tweet controversy about this commercial, and that they felt that it was a complete just ridiculing of current protests that were happening at that time. Black Lives Matter was the protest movement that was happening in force at that time. And so they thought that, you know, it's not as simple as that, like handing a Pepsi to a policeman. It's like you're kind of dumbing down what we're actually trying to do in society through these protests. And I feel that commercial happened because of groupthink, because it got so much negative backlash that you wonder, like, how did a creative team of really smart professionals totally miss the mark with millennials in creating a commercial that didn't connect with them at all? And I believe that groupthink happens when senior people have an idea and they want people to agree to it, and the other people just say, yes, yeah, that sounds great, okay. And they don't share what they're really thinking, which are contrasting opinions and differing views and wanting to have spirited debate around ideas. And so that's what I mean by groupthink, is the absence of spirited debate around contrasting opinions. And it should exist, that we should have courageousness in the workplace to object to ideas that our managers or directors or C-level executives believe is what we should do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you give us
So how can we be more courageous and share what we think in a situation where we disagree?
disagree with them, but without offending them?
Right, right. Well, usually the best way to disagree would say, what do you think about looking at it like this? Like, I'm seeing this from a little bit of a different perspective, and I'd like to get your thoughts on my perspective and how I'm seeing this. What do you think about this? And then sharing that idea and asking them for their opinion on it. Because if they have a position and then you take a position, that's when it can become confrontational. Whereas if you're actually asking them to just give their thoughts about a different perspective that you have, you're not confronting them, but you're actually just redirecting them a little bit, which is a conversational intelligence tool to redirect the conversation. And so try it like that.
Okay.
Or try and reframe it. That I think it might work, and I'm thinking about adding on this layer to it. Like, can you see how this layer might work with your idea? And what do you think about that? And actually kind of adding on to their idea with a different perspective or idea and seeing if the two can coexist. Because now I'm not eliminating your idea, I'm trying to add on to it. Okay, so we're trying to upregulate our conversations and build trust, right? Here's another acronym for trust. Transparency, relationship building, understanding, shared vision of success, truth and empathy. So when we have these kinds of feelings, intentions, mindsets, then we upregulate. Upregulate means to actually raise the quality of the conversation to a higher level. Downregulate, it happens negatively through fear, power, uncertainty, wanting to be right, and groupthink. So we want to avoid this addiction. I told you that there's this fatal flaw that you can hold when you go into a conversation, and that's the flaw of being addicted to being right. Are you addicted to being right? Raise your hand if you're addicted to being right. Wow, you are courageous. So thank you for being willing to share that. See, I'm not addicted to being right, but I'm really attracted to it. I'm attracted to being right. I've actually come down one notch. I've come down one notch because I realized that I like being married and I want to stay married. And so I found that being attracted to being right works better in the marital relationship than addicted to being right. So if you were afraid of being lonely, then avoid this addiction, right? Because people don't like spending a lot of time with people who are addicted to being right. It's an issue, and it creates conversational roadblocks. Because if you have to win at all costs, then you will stay at level 2, level 1 and level 2. You won't go to level 3 if you're addicted to being right. You saw on that conversational dashboard that continuum along the bottom, which was listening, right? We're trying to go from I to we. That happens through listening to connect. Listening to connect. Listening to connect is at a different level than listening to respond. Listening to respond is when I'm just listening to you long enough for me to formulate my response back to you, and I can't wait to share it. The moment you stop talking is the moment I'm going to start talking. And if I'm really excited, I actually won't even wait. I'll just start talking over you because I can't wait to share what I have to say because I like to listen to respond. There is a second level, and that's a level which Stephen Covey actually talked about, and that's listening to understand. Listening to understand is important and beneficial, and we want to do that. CIQ tries to take it up one more level, which is listening to connect. I'm actually interested in connecting with you and having a relationship with you, and therefore I'm listening to try to think about how could I support you, how can I help you, how can I connect with you through this conversation and actually have a stronger relationship with you after this conversation. That's listening to connect. After that is using double clicking. Using double clicking. Double clicking is a computer term that is turned into a CIQ term. And here's what it means. You hear a word that you feel like you know, but do you really know it? Do you really know the word, or do you really know the phrase? Double clicking is going into it with the other person and asking for elaboration. Expand on that for me. So let's do this exercise. The word is success. The word is success. And I want you to talk with your neighbor. We're going to do this for 2 minutes. Talk with your neighbor about what success means to you. Because we hear success in conversations a lot. We aim for success on projects. We want successful deadlines being met. We want our children to be successful. We want to be successful in our careers. What does success mean to us, though? Let's double click into that. So 2 minutes, okay? And I need you to stay with me on this because we only have a few minutes left in the session. I still have a few things I want to take you through, okay? So 2 minutes, what does success mean to you? I remember when Maria Shriver was interviewed on her meaning of success, and her meaning of success was pretty close to yours. I just want to be there for my family. I want to support my family. I'm not interested in being this big, super successful public figure and contribute to the lives of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. I just want to support my family. And so to her, her definition of success was a lot different than a lot of people that had been interviewed by Success Magazine. Because in Success Magazine, they always ask that question, the definition of success. So 2 different definitions, pretty different. Neither one is wrong. But without double clicking, can you see how they could have a total mismatch in terms of using that word success? In conversations that we have in the workplace, we don't double click enough. We take it for granted what the other person means by using a common term. And so double clicking is actually a conversational essential. Use it as a means of going deeper with someone, saying, okay, I want to stop for a second and just ask, so what do you mean by excellence? When you say that we should be committed to excellence, what does excellence mean to you? What does committed mean to you? Like what is committed to you versus committed to me? Because sometimes we get into these arguments in the workplace where some people feel that we're not sharing their commitment because we actually want to be home for dinner, because we don't want to do email over the weekend. Does that mean we're not committed? It's a different form of commitment. Neither one is wrong or right, but without double clicking, we can have these grievous misunderstandings that then lead to separation in the workplace. So as simple as a tool as this is, it's an awesome tool. It's a really good tool that you want to use. In conversational intelligence, we like to discover, and we do that by asking questions for which we have no answers. And when leaders can do this, ask questions without knowing the answer, because in level 2, we do this a lot where we ask what's called a leading question. A leading question is when we're actually trying to direct the conversation to our position by asking a leading question. Asking a question for which we have no answers is a totally open conversation. I don't know where this is going, and I'm just having a conversation. What do you think? Where do you think we could go as an organization? What's possible for us as a team? What products do you think the company should create? What new services do you think that we should be offering? Ask questions that we don't have the answers. As leaders, this is really powerful because leaders too often want to know all the answers. They feel that they need to have all the answers in meetings. We don't need to always prove that we're so smart. We can just prove that we're curious instead. And this one, avoiding the ladder of conclusions. So I know that this is the popular loser symbol, but for here it's the ladder symbol. Okay? So let me walk you through the ladder of conclusions because I think you're going to nod your heads and say, oh yeah, this happens sometimes. The ladder of conclusions is when two people have a situation where they have a little bit of a misunderstanding, and I'll give you an example. Usually when I send my manager an email, she is highly responsive. This time, she didn't respond. And I know she's not on vacation, so I'm not sure why she didn't respond. And then when she does respond, she responded in a fairly short way, which isn't her usual style. It was a little shorter email than what I expected, and it seemed like she kind of missed some of what I was asking. I wonder if she's not happy with me right now. Ladder of conclusions. We start thinking something, And then we start feeling something. We see her in the lunchroom and she doesn't say hi to us. And then we start thinking, she's not happy with me right now. She's mad at me. Why? Why is she mad at me? Why is she not responding to my email? What's wrong? And we start going up this ladder of conclusions on our own, and we find ourselves at the top of the ladder believing something that really is not based in facts. It's not based in facts or reality, but we're starting to believe it's real and starting to shift our version of reality to make it so. And you know that your subconscious mind wants to make what you believe true? Our subconscious mind wants to support our thinking and make it true. So if we believe good things, our subconscious mind wants to make those good things happen. If we believe negative things, our subconscious mind thinks, yeah, that's what's happening. That's true. Yeah, look at the way she looked at you in that meeting. So ladder of conclusions happens all the time. How do we get down from the ladder of conclusions? By having a caring and candid conversation with the other party and saying what you think is real. Sharing what you think is real. Sharing the narrative that you've been telling yourself, that story, and then having the other person surprise you by saying, that's what you thought? No, that's not what I meant. This ladder of conclusions happens a lot through email. Remember earlier in today's session, I told you that digital conversations aren't necessarily real conversations, and they can lead to misunderstandings. And then we talked about email wars that happen that can be solved through phone or face-to-face conversation. That's when we come down the ladder. Email creates this ladder of conclusions that we then have to come down through a face-to-face conversation. Don't try to resolve these situations over email. Resolve them in a live conversation where you're being caring, courageous, and candid. And being open and transparent about how you feel, and then the other person will let you know if that's real or not real. If it's real, then you can work on that. Maybe you do have a situation. Maybe there was some truth to it, but now you can work on it. If it's not real, then you can train yourself to stop going up that ladder so often. Because some of us go up this ladder way too often. At home, at work, in our clubs, at our church, whatever, wherever, we go up the ladder too often. So this tool is my gift to you because it can transform your reality with people that you spend a lot of time with and help you to understand that this is a real phenomenon that can be prevented, and you can start having more of those conversations that hit the mark. Right? Because remember, we want to have more than 1 out of 10 hitting the mark. We want to get up to 7, 8, or 9. So let's revisit the 3 levels. There's nothing wrong with level 1, level 2, except when we have a situation of fear or distrust that's being created through negative intention. If we have negative intentions at level 1 or level 2, that's when those conversations aren't helpful. They're not positive and constructive. So the point of this session is not to say live in a level 3 world, but the point is to say live in a level 3 world more. Live in it more. Because if you do, then you can have conversations in your life that go from this, like, how did this happen? Why do I have this disagreement with this person? Why do I have tension with this person all over again? Or why am I not fitting into my group? Why do I just feel like we're not connecting as a team? By using what you've learned today, you can take situations like these and turn them into situations like these, where you have eye contact, smiles, handshakes, warmth around the table, where we're actually creating good things because we're priming for trust. So I'll give you another tip about priming for trust. Before you go into a meeting, actually tap your frontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex, tap that and say, I want to activate this part of my brain in this meeting. I want to prime for trust. I want to be open. I want to share. I want to discover. I want to just have a level 3 conversation here. Especially when you think you might be heading into an environment where there could be low trust. There could be distrust or skepticism. If you can prime for trust, you can potentially upregulate the other party into a level 3 conversation. It is possible to have level 3 meets level 1 and the level 1 to be upregulated into a higher level of conversation. Okay. So additional resources to explore. You saw Judith's book in the video, Conversational Intelligence. This book is widely available. It's an excellent book that will go much, much deeper than what we can do in 75 minutes, right? I spent 14 months learning about conversational intelligence. So that tells you something about how deep we can go. So consider getting and reading the book. If you feel like, I want to learn about how I could have a session like this for my group at my company, or a full workshop where we go through multiple exercises together, or I want coaching on my communication style as a leader, then perhaps you'd like to connect with me. And if you'd like to connect with me, I have my contact information here. So this has been a terrific session. I'm so glad that you came here today to learn about how you could take your conversations to a higher level using conversational intelligence. Thank you very much.